Guys, it's Sabrina, and I'm going to be doing the lesson for this Wednesday. And the topic that I'm doing it on is why do I feel like I'm in chains when God has set me free? I've been wanting to do this lesson for about 3 years now, and I just couldn't do it. I'd start it and I'd get even more confused, and I realized that I couldn't even answer this question myself, let alone teach it to someone else. So after doing some searching, soul searching, and internet searching, I started to realize a few things that can help make you feel like you're free, like God has intended us to feel like, instead of feeling imprisoned by sin and by this world. So I hope you find this inspiring and beneficial and can apply it to your own life in some way. I'm going to start out with what keeps us away from God's freedom in our lives. I have 3 bullet points with my main points for this. My first one is sin. Sin separates us from Jesus and takes us on a different path. Separation from Jesus won't lead us into freedom. It may seem like the best option at the time, and it may seem satisfying, but ultimately it's going to get us nowhere. He gave us power over sin so we could experience this freedom. But the scriptures declare we are all prisoners of sin. Galatians 3:22. My second bullet point is distractions. Our busy lives and even serving Jesus can become a distraction at some point. In our culture, it's go, go, go. You have so many things to do throughout the day, and you have to accomplish them all in order to feel like you did a good job throughout the day, right? So if you just exhaust yourself in that way and not spend time with Jesus, it's going to wear you out physically and spiritually. Being able to slow down and take that time, like once a day or twice a day, how many times you want to do it. It's just really important to make sure that you get that time in our busy lives. Serving Jesus can be a distraction if your heart's not in the right place. If all you do is serve and you don't spend time with Jesus by yourself, you're just going to get really burned out and you're going to feel more imprisoned than free. My third bullet point for this section is straying away from Jesus' teachings can keep us away from God's freedom in our lives. As I said earlier, just knowing the word can help you throughout your day and all your battles and things. It feels like God is right there with you. If you stray from these teachings, it could lead you into sin, and sin is spiritual slavery. So you will be more imprisoned if you choose to be in a sinful path than if you would study Jesus' teachings and follow them. Jesus said to the people who believed in him, "You are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John 8:31-32. My next section is how do I experience the freedom that Jesus really has to offer in my life? I feel like these are important points because we talked about what keeps us away from freedom, but we also need to know how do we remain in the freedom that God really has stored for us. It's better than any freedom that you could ever experience. When I personally think of freedom, I think of becoming a teenager and learning how to drive. Like, that is like a huge sense of freedom for anybody, I'm assuming. So I feel like it's important to just know how to be free in Jesus as well. Once again, I have 3 main bullet points with my main points in this. My first bullet point is staying still, which I've already touched on that a lot throughout the lesson, but I feel like it needs its own individual point because it's just so important and so hard to do nowadays because, as I already said, we're just so busy doing everything that we feel is more important than spending time with God. So there are many emotional battles that we fight, and it's exhausting. Throughout the day, we fight many battles constantly. It doesn't matter if they're major or if they're just little things. If it matters to you, it matters, and you're fighting that battle. And it's exhausting because we're not meant to live that way. Jesus said, "All who are weary and heavy burdened, I will give you rest. Just come to me." And that's something that I feel like we don't do. We feel like we need to do it on our own, that we're strong enough and we don't need God to fight our battles. We totally got this. And even when we do pray for God to take it away, like, God, I'm really going through this right now and I don't know if I can do it, but I'm asking you to take it from me because I can't do it. And then we'll turn around and we'll be like thinking about it and we'll be like, oh man, this is such a bother to me. I really wish I can fix it. And then you just take it back upon yourself. So it can be really exhausting to not fully let go of what's bothering us. We'll let it go and then we'll take it back. We'll be like, God, never mind. You're not doing anything. I got this. And that's like literally the wrong mindset. But I personally know that I have that mindset sometimes, and it's something I really struggle with. So many battles we fight are exhausting because they're not our battles to fight. Jesus came down to earth and endured every sin, and he died, and he defeated sin and death. And we just struggle with so many things that I feel like we don't really have to if we really would just let it go. Like, God already defeated this stuff, and we're fighting a battle that's already been won. So if we can just fully surrender that to him, whatever is bothering us in our lives, the struggles, the events in our lives that are shaking our faith, like, he can help us through that instead of just trying to fight this battle alone, because we're not alone. We talked about God fighting your battles for you, but now we're going to talk about actually physically and spiritually staying still. As I already mentioned, in our culture, we're always so busy, and if we don't feel busy, we feel unfulfilled or maybe even lonely if you're not out with friends all the time, like a lot of us are probably feeling right now. However, God designed our bodies to need rest, physically and spiritually. That's why it's so important to find a time during every day where you can spend time with God in a quiet place and just study His Word and read His promises and His comforting words. I feel like this is a really important way to find freedom. Just knowing God's promises and having the faith that they will happen, and reading His comforting words and knowing that what He says is true and it'll happen. The Lord will fight for you while you keep still. Exodus 14:14. My second bullet point is believe. As soon as I say that, you might be thinking, well, I'm a Christian. I do believe in Jesus and that God sent him as his only son and he died and he rose from the dead in 3 days. That's great. And that is a really important part of being a Christian. But in a different way, believing has to be done every day. What I mean by that is you have to believe in every circumstance and whatever's happening in your life is according to His plan. It's the certainty that He will get you through this day and every day that is to come. So always believe that God is good, just, and holy, and He knows what's best for our lives, even when it may feel like our lives are falling apart. God is good, and it'll end up great in the end. As I said, it's an everyday choice where you choose to believe that God is always good. God is always there for you as you walk through the storms in your life. This will bring you peace and will bring your worried heart to freedom. But the scriptures declare that we are all prisoners of sin, so we receive God's grace of freedom by believing in Jesus Christ. Galatians 3:22. My last but very important bullet point is surrender. Just as there's nothing that we can do to earn God's love for us, there's nothing we can do to earn the freedom that He's already given us. We often try to control our own lives, thinking we know God's plan for our lives, so we take action, but sometimes that's just not the case. Being patient is the key to letting God lead. His timing is way different than ours, but it's always better. Surrendering what we want and what we think is best, and letting God lead may not sound like freedom. In fact, what's the fun of someone telling you all the time everything that you're supposed to do in your life and what path you're supposed to take? But however, it leads to the ultimate freedom and the most fulfillment in our lives if we just let go, surrender what we want, our plans, our future to God, and let Him lead. God doesn't make us follow Him or His will. It's our choice. If we choose to be in the will of God, everything else will fall into place. You will find freedom by letting go. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Proverbs 3:5-6. In conclusion, it's easy to stray from Jesus and his teachings, especially with the busy lives that we all have. God has given us victory over sin and death through Jesus. So falling back into sin will only leave us more imprisoned and not make us feel the freedom that he has given us. We can find freedom from being still, believing and surrendering. By being still, we are able to spend time with Jesus and allow his word to speak to us. We can also find freedom by turning to Jesus when fighting our emotional battles, because we're not meant to fight our battles alone. Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. By believing that God is good in every circumstance, no matter what you are going through in your life, you'll find comfort and peace. We have to remind ourselves daily that God is good, holy, and just, and whatever comes our way, he will be right beside us. By believing that God is good in every circumstance, and trusting that he is with us through the storms of life, we find comfort and peace. We have to remind ourselves daily that God is good, and whatever comes our way, he'll be walking right beside us. Finally, by surrendering and letting go of what we want for our lives, we can experience God's perfect plan for our lives. Letting him lead instead of taking control of our own lives in the end will make us feel free. I hope this message touched you in some way. As I said earlier, it took me 3 years to be able to put this into words, exactly what I wanted to say. And even while I was working through it, I was reminded of these things. And I hope it's encouraging to you, because it was encouraging to me as well. The more you go through life, you will start to realize how free we really are spiritually. I wish you all the best, and I hope to see you soon. Now, the final thing I have 4 questions for you. You can either message me, you can comment below on whatever you're watching this on, YouTube or on Facebook, or you can just do it for yourself, because these are kind of personal questions. So if you want to keep it to yourself, it's totally fine. It's to help you kind of reflect on the lesson and to help you get more out of it, I guess. Lack of a better way to say that. Okay. Question 1. Out of being still, believing, or surrendering, what is the hardest for you and why? Number 2. Why are we always trying to deal with our problems instead of giving it to God completely? Question 3. What right now in your life is making you feel chained, burdened, or upset? And number 4. How can I pray for you? Please don't be afraid to reach out to me if you have my contact information. If you don't, I'm willing to give it to you, because we're all in this together, guys. And I know right now is such a hard time. We feel so isolated and lost and just alone, honestly. So just remember that you're not alone. God is with you. A friend is only one phone call away, as well as I am as well. So if you guys need anything, please don't be afraid to reach out. And once again, I hope this message touched you, and I hope you have a good day, and I hope to see you all soon. Love you guys.